So, Mr. White, what I find strange is that when you're doing this YouTube, it actually takes about 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah, there's a delay.
There's a
There's a
delay.
delay. Yes, there is.
Ah, so hold on. Dr. Fisher Shaw, I've made you the host. I don't know if I made the right one the host. I made you the host so that you could share.
Can you just make both of them, please, so that I can? I'm gonna be using it.
No, I don't think she can again in a back. Because she transferred everything to you. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so you have to
Let me see
make
then.
make your other account the host, and then give back Susan co-host.
Let me see. So I need to share from. All right, let me just see if I can share from this one. Okay. All right, so good afternoon, everyone.
Hold on.
Despite.
So David, Mr. White, could you come here a second to my office, please?
Okay.
Just want to make sure that I'm doing this right since I'm streaming. Sorry, guys, I'm doing this for the first time. So my technical support is Mr. White. Yes, Mr. White. I just want to make sure it's recording. How do I record? It's live, but how do I press record?
Should I give you back host privileges?
Oh, I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
should I give you back host privileges?
Could you record? I just want to record so it's actually recorded. Because I think if you don't record, it won't be saved.
And it's streaming live, right?
Yeah. Okay, so all right. No, I'm not.
Yeah, she has to click it. I'll give you
You haven't given me the. You give it. What you give me the?
I did. I made the host.
No, you gave me the one that is the my phone. Hold on. Can this one record from here? Oh, here. Is it not recording? Oh, there it is. Yes. Ah, good. Thanks. You can go ahead.
Okay. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I trust all is well. I'm Lisa Facey Shaw, and I'll be doing this brief presentation on the literature review. And here are some of the things that we want to look at. We just want to understand some of the terms used in, the terms associated with a literature review. Why is it that we conduct one? Some of the different sources of literature, what should be included, some of the steps in conducting the review, and how we can organize it, and a couple of pitfalls to avoid when we're doing so. So just to mention, when we're speaking about literature review, just so that we have that understanding, we're really talking about a summary and an analysis of relevant publications or relevant articles and so on a topic. Just move right on a topic. All right, so that generally is what the literature review means, and we have our references there. And so just in speaking about literature, we are looking at the collection of the relevant written sources on the topic, both in terms of theory and in terms of empirical works. So theoretical, the thoughts and opinions that persons would typically have on a particular topic, right? Sort of exploring their beliefs and assumptions about what the topic is conveying. And we also have empirical works, which will be based on verifiable evidence. You've conducted studies, you've done surveys, different kinds of measurable, verifiable evidence, and that you're putting those together. So that would cover broadly what literature is, scholarly conversation about a topic. And then we have gray literature, which comes from sources such as your government agencies. It could be some policy institutes, think tanks, and this is information or research that they would have conducted or information that they have provided, right? Which is not your traditional academic type literature. We also, just to speak about some of the terms, we also speak about open access, where you have research, scholarly research that is available, right, for unrestricted use, or you may have, depending on the types of licensing arrangements, it's available for you to use, but not maybe not distribute or not modify, in that way. So it depends on the open access licensing arrangements, right? But typically available for you to use, because a lot of times the traditional platforms via which we get our literature, you have to either subscribe to the platform, by virtue of paying for those articles, or maybe your institution like UTech would subscribe to them, and so you're able to access those. Okay. Review articles now would be those that look at existing literature. So they have a series of literature that they would have gone through, and they would have analyzed that in such a way, giving it some kind of balanced perspective. And so you're able to look at those as well. So those are just some examples of some of the terms typically associated with your literature review. Okay, and we have our sources there. Why we want to conduct literature review? As mentioned, I'm not seeing my screen moving. Just make sure that you're seeing. Can you tell me what you're seeing on screen? Definition of okay, my screen seemed to have disappeared. Let me just. Any back permission, Miss Muir, to share? My screen seemed to have disappeared. But while I wait for the permissions, yes, I need permission to share. My I'm not sure what happened if I lost connection, but my presentation came off screen. Work in the area. There are other scholars who have conducted studies, who have put forward viewpoints, who have documented their work. And for still waiting. And what you want to do is to look at what literature exists in the area surrounding the topic or the field in which you're about to conduct your own work. And what you want to do is to position what it is that you are going to be doing in light of other scholars' work. Okay. Still not able to share, but I'll continue nonetheless. So you're documenting the conversation in the field. You are positioning your own work within the context of what already exists. So you want to look at what sorts of questions have other scholars asked about the topic, right? What do you already know about the topic itself? What kind of questions remain? What are the gaps that exist? Can I share now? No, still not able to share. All right, but I'll proceed nonetheless. Because, let's say that you're doing a study on augmented reality in a particular discipline. Then there are other scholars who have actually written about the use of augmented reality, maybe in, business or in education or in agriculture or in tourism. And if you are doing a study about augmented reality, then you want to know what are the sorts of conclusions they have drawn based on what it is that they have looked at in their own studies. What are some of the gaps? What are some of the recommendations that they are suggesting? Researchers tend to say that, here are some areas that we think should be useful for further study. And so you want to look at those because it helps you to contextualize what it is that you're doing, so that you're not necessarily repeating. Yes, Ms. Mira?
Try again, just to share, but you were sharing before. Try again.
Okay. All right, here we go. All right, there we are. Right? So just to catch back my train of thought, you want to see what exists regarding this particular topic so that you are able now to make the kinds of linkages with what it is that you are studying, how relevant your own topic is to what already has been out there. So it sets the context for what it is that you're about to do. You'd have identified strengths and weaknesses of other studies and look at the gaps as mentioned here so that you can know going forward, right? What areas it is that you want to focus on, right? Where are the gaps? What have been suggested as areas that you yourself can look at? And then to have that as, the basis for your own study. Now, some sources of literature include journal articles, and these are highly regarded sources because they are peer-reviewed, considered to be the best sources. They've gone through a level of rigor by peers out there in the field. And so, they're highly, they're considered to be highly credible and reputable sources. And we just have some examples there of platforms through which you can get access to journal articles. Other sources of literature, also considered to be, reputable, include theses and dissertations. You have conference proceedings. So, persons write papers that get published at these conferences, and the proceedings are available so that if you want to see, what work has been done in these areas, you can actually look at these proceedings and get, information that can help you with your own study. Okay. Books, textbooks, again, these are sources, policy briefs and government reports. As I mentioned, you have these institutions, think tanks, etc. You have research institutes, and they, put out information and put out research sometimes. And those are great sources as well. Now, let me ask persons here a question. Are there any sources that you would consider to be inappropriate? Would anyone want to venture an answer? Any sources that you consider to be inappropriate? I see a response there, Wikipedia. And now what we're talking about is in light of, academic work. There are sources considered to be less credible, right, than those which we mentioned before, predominantly because they would not have gone through the level of rigor, all right, the process involved in ensuring that, information is checked and verified. And not sure who that was. So in terms of inappropriate sources, some of these sources that we mentioned that are less credible, is not that they're not good sources of information generally, especially for explanation purposes and so on. But when it comes on to scholarly work, we want work that has gone through this process of rigor. Somebody's background is a little noisy.
Dude.
We want processes that have, we want sources that have gone through a level of rigor. Let me see if I have host. I probably need to mute. Right? And that can be considered to be credible. Okay. So other sources, magazines, your ordinary websites that are there, your blogs, because people are giving their opinions. They may not have gone to do empirical work, studies where you can measure and observe and come back with your conclusions based on what has been done, right? Or where you have, 3-4 persons who have looked at an article that you have submitted for consideration for publication and, have assessed it in light of, criteria that would help to support the credibility and the repeatability of the source itself. So that's where we're coming from in terms of some of the sources that would not be considered to be scholarly as it is that you're conducting your literature review. So what are some of the things that you want to include in your literature review? Again, those kinds of works that document the conversation in your field of study, documents that explain the background of your topic. So I'd mentioned augmented reality before. If you're looking at augmented reality in a particular discipline, then in terms of the background, what information is there about augmented reality? How have people defined it? What disciplines have persons used augmented reality in? So some of that general information to support the background, those are things that you want to include. Now, I have their seminal literature of the field, classic works. Now, ordinarily, you want to have articles in your study that, or in your write-up at least, that are at least very recent. So we typically say no more than 5 years old. All right, so you want very recent literature. However, there is what's considered to be seminal literature of the field. And I give an example there. If I'm speaking about intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, and I want to look at motivation of, let's say, computing students or learning programming, then yes, I want to ensure that my sources are within, the 5-year mark. But I really could not be speaking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation without making reference to authors like Ryan and DC, because these are authors who have done classic works in the field, right? And so even though they may have articles written from the 70s or from the 2000s, right? And if you just look at what I have there, and you see the citation, 21,000 citations, right? 21,000 plus citations, wow, right? Then this is what we consider to be seminal literature. So if it is that you're doing a study, for example, on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and you are not citing Ryan and DC, then when somebody looks at your work, they're not going to be taking you seriously, because these gentlemen have done quite a bit of stuff. They're the go-to persons, the authority on this work in terms of this area. And so you can have articles beyond that 5-year mark, especially where, those are considered to be really classic and unique, contributing to the discipline. Now, where is it that you can find these articles? I just want to point you to some of the resources that we have available at UTech Calvin McCain Library. So here are some examples of the databases, right, for our faculty of engineering and computing: Access Engineering, Novel, IEEE Explore, ACM Digital Library, EBSCO ProQuest, and we have all those listed there. So for persons who may not have known, you can actually go onto the library's website, and with your credentials, you can access these sources. So, I know Google Scholar is one that is very popular and persons use it, but just to say that there are additional databases and additional sources that you can get your literature from, and these are the ones that are provided for our faculty in terms of the literature. And we actually have someone who has been assigned to our faculty. Her name there, Tricia Price. And so if you have an article, for example, that you're trying to locate and you're not coming across it, you can actually contact her. They are excellent in terms of assisting with, providing this information. And, these databases here are ones that are very topical in our field, relevant in our field. And, we have this wide set of resources available for us. All right. Because I know one of the questions might be, well, persons may say, well, I don't know where to find articles. And sometimes when we look at the reference list, in the papers or the research paper that students provide, you wonder sometimes whether they have gone to these sources, whether they have looked to see, scholarly work that's out there. So if you're looking for sources, here are some databases, and you can check the library for some of these. Now, how do you conduct the literature review? Right? The first thing that you need to know how to do is to search. Right? It seems to be, general, you just type in some terms, but there are actually some strategies that you can use to help you to find those articles that, that you're looking for. So appropriate search terms, using Boolean and example, augmented reality, or if you're looking for virtual reality, or so on, using and operators, using operator, filtering. We mentioned that you recent work, so filtering in terms of limiting your sources to, let's say since 2017 or since 2016 thereabouts, right? And using different keywords and so on to help you, using these operators, filtering in terms of what may not have been peer reviewed. For some platforms, you can actually check, that you want only peer reviewed work. You can filter out languages apart from English, etc. So those are things that will help you to narrow down in the databases that you're looking at, so that you can ensure, or at least get a better sense of the wealth of information that's out there, because that can be a little bit daunting. You're doing a search, you find thousands and thousands and thousands of articles, and you don't even know where to start. So filtering helps. What you want to do as well is to identify some primary sources on the topic. When you come across an article, read through the abstract. At least that gives you a sense as to whether or not this is something that would be relevant for my own study. You also may need to look at additional sections as well, especially if you're looking at methodology, if you're looking at the recommendations and conclusions made, because again, it's a wealth of information to go through. And so you want to be very strategic in terms of how it is that you search and how it is that you go through to ensure that this is a relevant article for your own study. right? Being able to summarize the information from each source. Now, there are various ways in which persons can, you know, summarize the information, or at least note, you know, for this particular article. Yes, it's important. You could create a table of summarized information. You know, you identify the authors, identify the title, you look at what they have done, their research questions, what theories they may have used, you know, sample size, their findings, etc. So you can create a table, or I mean, just be basic. You just identify you've come across a particular article, you just jot it down, you know, your notepad, your ordinary word processing documents. You just identify, because sometimes, and you know, it has happened to I suppose all of us. You've read an article, you've noted that there were some key points made in the article, and later on, when you start to do your write-up, or when you move on to another chapter, you remember that this was important, but you don't remember which article you found it in, right? Or you don't remember where in the article it was, etc. So just summarizing the important information from each source that you find to be relevant is very helpful, and just noting it so that you can always go back to what it is that you know, your table or your document, which has that information. And so you want to organize your approach to writing, and you want to ensure that, you know, you keep on polishing your article. You know, the first time you put the information in, it may be too much information, so you might have to go back and just edit accordingly, right? And we have our sources there. So some of the questions that you want to ask as it is that you're conducting your literature review would include, how is it that you're going to organize it? Are you going to organize the literature by topic? Are you going to organize it in terms of chronology, right? Over a period of time, you know, coming down to this year, you know, how are you going to organize your literature, right? What approach are you going to be using? Just admit some persons. How are you going to show the distinctions in terms of the studies that you're looking at? You know, using appropriate headings, right? Using your paragraphs well. You know, sometimes, you know, we look at works and you have, you know, long, windy paragraphs, right? And, you know, you want to organize it well so that it's, you know, typically in themes or so that it's logical. You know, it makes sense to the reader. You know, it's a good read. You can follow through in terms of the literature itself. All right. Are you explaining why is it that you're including certain studies? And again, what you're trying to do is to connect the literature, or to ground your own study in light of what exists. So what kind of connection is there to your topic? And this is not to say that you're going to be speaking, you know, about your own work here, because remember, the literature review is about the articles, you know, the works that have already existed. All right. Not so much yours, although towards the end of the literature, you can sort of position now to say that, okay, based on all that we have gone through in the literature, you know, what it is that you're about to do and how this current research is necessary. But it's about ensuring that there's a connection to your topic. So yes, you're looking at augmented reality in education here, and you can see that these studies have been done. You know, you may be looking at how augmented reality can provide engagement of learners. And so, you know, there may have been studies looking at engagement and, you know, what it is that they've found, you know, strengths and weaknesses or gaps, etc. So you want to make that connection to the topic. Because remember, when it comes down now to your chapter 5, right, where you're doing your sort of discussion of your topic and everything, you're going to be discussing what you have found in light of the literature, right? The same literature review that you have gone through. You're going to look at what you have found. So you're going to be making that connection drives engagement for our learners. You're drawing that connection later on. And so it's important that from now in your literature review, typically for us, your chapter 2, that you identify these areas so that you can later on make that sort of analysis in terms of existing literature, right? Studies that are important, all the different areas of your research. So, your research questions, for example, and I know I have a slide about pitfall, but just because it comes to mind now, some persons tend to think that if they have 1, 2, 3 research questions, then they're going to be trying to answer the research questions in the literature review. That's not what the literature review is about. It's not answering your own research questions. You're going to be investigating, right, based on your research questions to see what exists. What is it that the data is saying? Okay, so you're not answering your research questions in your literature review. You are looking at the topics, right, relevant to those questions. So if you want to investigate, to what extent are persons motivated by the use of health-related applications, then your literature review would have looked at now, studies involving those applications, what it is that they have found, so that later on in your own analysis, you can make that sort of comparison. All right. And it's just organizing, ensuring that you summarize as you move from one study to the next, and ensuring that by the end of your literature review, you can indicate why it is that this research is necessary. All right, persons may not have looked at it in a particular way. And so what it is that you want to do is to, take this perspective and see whether or not it's consistent with the literature, what the literature says. This is just another slide in terms of how you can organize a literature review. Having your introduction, which would set the context and provide information about the field of study and the relevance of your topic, right? Going down to your methods, what kind of approach is it that you're taking to conduct the literature review itself, and going down to the body of your work now, and in terms of the approach that you're taking, whether you're organized it via chronology, right? Looking at different time periods, or if you're using themes, which I think may have been the approach typically taken by our students, right? Having your subtopics based on these different themes, then you list those. You have those, as the body of your work, and then you move on to your discussion and your conclusion, where you summarize the main contributions. You discuss questions about the field, you mention the gaps, and then possible suggestions for further study. All right. So, and this reference list really would go at the end of our typical chapter 1 to 5 model. All right. And we have the sources there. Now, just to mention some pitfalls in conducting the literature review. One is being too descriptive. Oftentimes, the information is out there in the articles, and then we say, okay, Shaw 2018 says this, right? And we provide a summary. And in some cases, some persons provide a long summary. Perhaps we shouldn't even call it a summary, because they've written so much about the work of this one author or group of authors, right? Not recognizing that that's why you have your reference list. If somebody really wants to know more about what it is that you're doing, or the work that has already been done, the reference is there. They can do that. Just really, looking at the person's work, but not just reporting, but you're reviewing. In other words, and that other point is there, you're comparing and contrasting findings. Here are the group of authors, Shaw, White, and Panther, individually, they agree that engagement is important, that health-related apps are helpful in providing motivation for exercise and so on. All right. However, right, and this is where it moves from just reporting on what these persons have done. But, however, this particular author, sees it in a different way. And so you contrast. So I think at times persons tend to think that, well, you must find literature that supports what it is that you're doing. So mainly positive, we're doing a study on mobile applications, to support networking or green computing or whatever the topic is. And you just look for those that support what it is that you're going to do, because you know that you're going to create an app and you want it to be positive, right? However, it's about the literature, right? The work that has been done. Maybe there have been weaknesses found where applications are concerned, and you want to investigate, right, to see if your own study is in agreement with what has already been done, or if it detracts from it. No, the research is not just about something positive and it always has to, support existing findings, right? Because you want to advance the field. You want to look at all, you want to balance the work, strengths, weaknesses, gaps, because those things now help other persons to then go and investigate to see, well, okay, here are these gaps. Let me see if I investigate, if I study it in a particular field, if I'll have a different conclusion, or if I use a different methodology, right? Because there may be weaknesses in studies based on the type of methodologies that have been used, the sample, whether you've used questionnaires or taking a more qualitative approach, or just the nature of your methods, and so you have to review, right? Not just report, but review, balance it, compare, contrast. And again, you want to ensure that what you're reviewing links to your research question, right? Yes, you're studying augmented reality in education, or whatever the case might be, and you're looking at whether there are technical challenges or the extent to which technical challenge with these types of applications. So in that literature, your review or speaks to the fact to those. Just checking. Are you still hearing me, or?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Sometimes you're a little bit breaking up for a few
Yeah, I
moments,
realize
but
now
we're
that my
hearing you.
connection. Okay, so my
Yeah, it's
connection.
not always. I had a comment / question. So what exactly is reviewing, Dr. Casey Shaw? Meaning, I know you're saying that reporting is different than reviewing, but perhaps there's one or two people on the live or on this who are not sure exactly what is that reviewing.
Right, and so the point that I was making, let me just see if I can, don't know if I have, well, it's gone back to, yeah. So the point that I was making is that you're not just saying that, well, Shaw 2020 says that motivation is not important, or so in a sense you are, or let's say you need to do both, if you get very, very technical in terms of the terms. So you will speak to recommendations, etc., that the persons would have provided, or approaches that they have taken. But what you also want to do is not just limited to that. You want to analyze the literature itself, right? Not just say this person.
You lost her, miss. You lost her.
Yeah, we lost her. I just made her host again, and then she. Hold on, what's happening?
No, man, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, but we lost you for a second.
Okay.
Trust me, your screen just froze and you were all frozen for
Yes, for
about
about
10
3
seconds.
seconds.
It was
Oh,
funny. You're back though.
boy, you know, connectivity.
Yeah, technology.
Yeah.
Myself and somebody who's on the call here, Mr. Malcolm, we did a little search earlier. There's a article written from Pakistan which has quite a number of citations already about e-learning since COVID. And it's
Oh,
amazing
interesting.
how many people in Pakistan don't have internet connectivity. So there's
Right.
some cases worse than us in Jamaica. Just
Yeah,
giving a
so
context to
Charlie.
everybody here. We're not doing so bad. The people in Pakistan, according to the research, I think there was the number one difficulty in having e-learning happen.
Right. Right. So just to get back to this, and again, this is coming from, you know, the source that's written there in terms of it's a little bit more that you want to do. You just don't want to state that, okay, this person says that and this person says that and just move on. But especially as it relates to what it is that you want to investigate, you're analyzing the literature with that sort of perspective, right? Oftentimes persons may include some sources, but you don't see the relevance to the topic. All right, you're not building it up logically to identify maybe, you know, strengths and weaknesses, or, you know, to get those kinds of gaps, or to balance it, you know, compare, you know, here are these articles that have, you know, reported on this particular issue, and then, you know, balance that, look at, you know, contrast that with what it is that they have said. And so that's where that reporting versus reviewing come from. And there's the source there that you can always look at to get more information. And the other pitfall there is about having or not having the quality sources. So again, we made a point earlier that you want to identify peer-reviewed, you know, scholarly sources, not just going onto a blog or a website and, you know, putting that as a form of scholarly work, you know, by virtue of the kind of rigor that they would have gone through. All right. And then not grounding up your statements, not backing statements with sources. So if I'm going to say as an introductory statement that there is a lot of, or you know, many authors, many scholars have many scholars support the notion that I'm just sticking with augmented reality, that augmented reality can enhance learning, right? This is in your literature review, and you just leave it at that, and you don't have the sources to back that up. For a line like that, you need to have, you know, you're citing maybe 3-4 different scholarly works, which would then support the point that you're making, that, you know, that there's a lot of research in the area. So merely just making statements like that without backing them up with your literature, right, is a pitfall when you're doing the literature review. The other thing to note is that when you are, and this is a common mistake, you are making reference to one source, and then you say, for example, Facey Shaw 2020 highlights, you know, these particular or these statements, and then you go on. So that's the end of a sentence, and then you move on to talking about some additional things that Facey Shaw 2020 has said, but there's no citation that's there. Anything that comes after, which is not making reference to or citing Facey Shaw 2020, is suggesting that this is, you know, your own statement, right? Or persons write a whole entire paragraph, and at the very end, they then make reference to Facey Shaw 2020. But the entire paragraph has been about Facey Shaw 2020, right? But only that last line has a citation. Yeah, you have to be careful about some of those things, because really and truly what you want to do is to give credit to the authors. And sometimes inadvertently, persons, they're not clear on how to cite or how to make references to continue a conversation about a particular source, right? You could make a statement like, the author goes on to say so and so, or Facey Shaw and colleagues, also state that so and so and so, right? So those are some of the things that you want to be mindful of as you're, writing up your literature review, to ensure that the proper citation, proper credit is given to the works. And, maybe it is that you need to be, and this is where we talk about integrating the literature. So if an whole entire paragraph, you're writing that entire paragraph about the article by Facey Shaw, you could include other works, right? Facey Shaw suggests so and so and so. On the other hand, White 2018, indicates that. So you sort of have a logical, natural flow to your literature, and you don't run the risk of not citing the information from Facey Shaw because you have a whole paragraph with 7, 8 sentences, and you don't necessarily want to just put Facey Shaw, Facey Shaw, Facey Shaw, all 7 times. So I think those are just a couple more, and so
Dr. Facey Shaw, you're breaking up.
are you hearing me?
We're hearing you now.
Okay, I just missed connection. Well, just 2 more points to make and then I'm done. Again, missing key studies, right? As I mentioned before, depending on the work that you're doing, there are some authors, in the field who have done outstanding work. And so if you don't include those, then, persons may not take you seriously and not looking for information outside the discipline. So even if you're doing augmented reality in education, then perhaps there are studies on augmented reality in tourism or in business or in architecture, right? That provide key information that can help to support what it is that you're doing, right? Because maybe they have looked at some of the technical challenges associated with, providing this kind of augmented reality, whether it's application or so on. And you'd have missed on some of those areas. The end, I think, of the presentation, and I'm sure Ms. Muir will continue. So I don't know if you have any questions now for me, and I'm available to answer.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions or comments, colleagues and students? No comments or questions? Not even commendations?
So it's either very good or very bad. They can decide.
They're all in silence. I'm just wondering.
Or trying to soak up, all of what was presented just now.
I see. Well, my
I
thinking,
think I can
not even Mr. White
stop
is
my
able to
video
think.
now.
In light of, thanks very much, Dr. Fisher. In light of
You're
what
welcome.
we just presented, I am thinking that would, maybe we have another hour if we all want, is what will be useful is if we looked at either a chapter 1, in particular the background, or some elements of a literature review. So is there any group that either you are confident that your project is really good and you want to go from your, A- to your A+, or you really are, oh my goodness, I don't know what we're doing, and so we really want some help. I mean, you don't have to tell us which category you're in, but this is really a workshop for the rest of the time. So whether it is that you're concerned about your background in your chapter one, which is actually a literature review, it's a mini literature review, or your entire chapter two, which is a longer literature review, who needs some help or assistance or feedback, either now or in the future. This is now where we're inviting you to speak up, raise your hand, or type in the comment section. Don't all speak at once. So wait, am I to take it here that everybody is super confident, and so that's why we're asking the no comments?
You hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you, Janelle. Go ahead. We were hearing you, but now we're not hearing anything anymore. Go again.
I'm saying that my group would like to look at our literature review, but I didn't
Okay.
email it to you previously.
Okay. Well, if I don't know. Since you seem to have spotty internet, maybe if you emailed it to me, I could share it on the screen. Is there
Okay,
any other? So okay, any other group who? I mean, right now today, no, we're not talking about next week at the moment. So in fact, let's ask it two different ways. Is there any group today that wants feedback in addition to Jenny's group? And any group who wants assistance, say, next week on this topic? Group or individual? Wow, so everybody else is either confident or even not, don't want to say anything, not sure what. So while I'm waiting for Janelle to email, I think we need to actually have some for additional surveys. So we had a survey last week of people who were here, and it was very interesting what the students who actually answered the survey said. Interestingly, if I'm Dr. Fisher, I can't tell if I'm saying it right. It seemed as if quite a number of students felt that they had some insight, and the critique was that there was too much emphasis on, by one person or maybe one or more, is that there was too much emphasis on theory. My take on that is maybe there is too much emphasis on theory, but at the end of it, if you don't understand the theory, it's going to be difficult to put the theory into practice, because all of research is an application of theoretical concepts in some particular project that either has theoretical or practical significance. So what I actually think, in addition to Ms. Anderson's project, I think it would be really helpful for more groups to look at their chapter one, to make sure that their chapter one is, what you call it, is coherent with literature that together makes good sense. So I'm really challenging all of you to look at, look at if you are able to bring your chapter one to the table for next week. Mr. White, you don't think it's a good idea? Is he here listening? I know Mr. White is in about 3 meetings, so I'm not sure if he's here listening. All right, let's now. I'm going to look to see if Janelle has sent me her project. Let's see which email would be this one. No. Yeah, I'm looking for the email. I don't see the email as yet. Ms. Anderson, have you sent me the email as yet?
Yes, Professor, I just sent it.
Oh, I just sent it. Oh, here we go. All right. Oh, it's just the review alone you sent. The reason, anyway, I just open this. Okay, so let me now.
So should I have sent chapter one as well?
Yeah, that would have been good, but it's all right. We're just going to go ahead and share. Let me see, where's the share Where is the share? Share screen. Oh, I'm not the host. Can somebody either make me the host or allow me to share? Or am I the host on the other machine? Let me try to see. Am I the host? I'm not sure. Who's the host right now?
You're the host.
Oh, I'm the host, right? Let me
Yes.
just. I'm going to make my yes. What happens? I'm not on the host on the right machine. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's not what I want. So let's see. I think it's this. All right. I was going to do. Yeah, it would have been more helpful to look at the entire. It is okay. You can then.
Because I sent you one with chapter 1 and chapter 2.
Oh, wait, chapter 1 and chapter 2. All right. So let's open this again. Okay, all right. So the reason why I like to do all of, even if you don't look at chapter 1, is because, as I'm going to explain, you see how Dr. Tracy Shaw said that there should be a relationship between the research questions and lit review. So, okay, so this project is an appraisal of e-prescription app in enhancing patient care in Jamaica during the current COVID-19 pandemic. So we're not going to read the background right now. We could look at the problem statement quickly just to give a context. The disruption caused by the COVID-19 virus has affected people with non-communicable diseases, making access to appropriate medical care difficult. As such, patient turnout has steadily decreased. As a result, there's a challenge in getting regular checkups and filling prescriptions that affect the well-being of these patients. Emerging research indicates that people with chronic disease have a high rate of succumbing to the COVID-19 virus and therefore should continue to monitor their health carefully. There shouldn't be a full stop here. There's 2 full stops. There's an opportunity to explore the potential use of an e-prescription app as a countermeasure for patient care while prescribing medication for chronic illnesses. So there are 3 research questions. How receptive are Jamaican physicians, at-risk patients, and pharmacists to adopting e-prescription apps in Jamaica? And how receptive are Jamaican pharmacists, physicians, and at-risk patients to monitoring medication adherence online? And what are the perceptions of pharmacists, physicians, and at-risk patients of a pilot version of the e-prescription app that they're going to create? So let's not worry reading the rest of it. Just letting you know, my group, this is a group that I'm supervising. Just when you create this as chapter 1, at the time you have a reference list, but when you put it together at the end, this reference list goes into the overall reference list, so you don't keep this reference list. It goes into the overall one. And just for everybody know, so Jenny et al., you guys following what I'm saying? So this will no longer be there. But the other thing is just to have everybody know, in my opinion, in a best case scenario, most of these references would also be in chapter 2. So I'm just saying to everybody, because a lot of people, they don't have to be. But in general, what you put in chapter 1 is usually the best of your references. And then chapter 2 is a bigger group of references because it's looking at the whole project. So here's chapter 2 now. I think, yeah, literature reviews. All right, so chapter 2 now says that the area of mobile health. Okay, so it's first we're going to have limited time to look at this because we're not going to look, I think, at the whole thing. So first we're going to just look and see how they have outlined it. So they have an introductory section. They have impact of COVID-19 on patients with comorbidities. Remember that this means people who have more than one disease. Then they have digital health interventions, which is mobile health apps and e-prescription. Maybe it's apps. Something about this seems a little bit funny, but anyway, digital health interventions. Then they have, what's the next section? Prevalence of mobile health apps. Then you have remote monitoring of medication adherence in at-risk patients. Usability of mobile applications. Summary. Okay. All right. So we have something in the chat. Is it for me only? It's a message, but I can't see it. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. No problem.
Yes, unfortunately, Miss Mary, I'm gonna have to.
No problem.
Okay.
All right. So back to, thanks very much for presenting. I think it was very useful. Even some things you said, in my real opinion, is a good reminder to me. And the thing that I think most students don't remember is really they run on, even the best students, of having chapters where they just make one reference to some particular reference, and then they just go on and on where they keep making reference to one article and then there's no citation. That's one thing I
Right.
see many people not doing right. I mean, you're right,
Okay.
lots of other things too, but thank you.
Okay.
So,
Thanks. Take care.
yeah, man, take care. So guys, so you have this project and they have an introduction. So in general, no matter what is at the beginning of the introduction, which hopefully we're going to give us some background, the last part of the introduction should tell us what this paper is going to be about, or this section. So it says literature review will discuss the impact of COVID-19 on patients with comorbidities, digital health tools, including mobile health apps, e-prescription. Is this apps or tools? The prevalence, something is missing here, you know. So the prevalence of mobile health apps, monitoring, medication adherence through apps, and usability of mobile health apps. Yeah, so here's the thing that I'm looking at it. I think something is still not quite right with this. So I like this. There's the health impact, as in there's a real problem. COVID-19 is having an effect on patients with comorbidities. You have digital health intervention tools, which by the way is not just apps. So there are apps and there's other things. So maybe you decide to just look at apps. So I'm sort of wondering why you didn't just even for paragraphs, just look at the overview of digital health intervention tools. So just to get, since I actually know, digital health intervention tools include everything like SMS, apps, websites, pedometers. It's actually a whole range of things. I mean, maybe you would need more than a paragraph because you're going to focus on mobile apps. And then if this is particularly e-prescription mobile apps, then you probably should call it that. It's not just, I don't know. I think, I'm not sure. Maybe this is by itself, or maybe it's e-prescription tools. Come again?
It's supposed to be apps, e-prescription
Yeah,
apps.
something is missing here. The prevalence of mobile health apps. Yeah, so I'm actually thinking that this probably in the order is also important. So I think prevalence of mobile apps would probably come before e-prescription. I'm trying to think about it. You see, digital health interventions, prevalence of those save tools, the use of it for monitoring. You know what's not here? Usability. There's nothing in these areas about how effective they are. So you're certainly going to want to have something about the e-prescription, which is your focus. And you certainly want to look at digital health tools, if they're prevalent, how much they help with monitoring medication adherence given your project. And you definitely want to say something about, so maybe it could be prevalence of mobile health apps, and then maybe prevalence of e-prescription apps. I don't know, something here to me, the order could be better. That's easy enough to fix. But I'm still wondering, looking at this, are you going to ever tell us about the effectiveness of these tools? So I don't know if in here something tells us about effectiveness. We either want to know that people have said that there is promise, or that there is effectiveness, or even what's the word called efficacy. Not true? So everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? So there's a fancy word that we don't need to worry what that means. But basically, I don't see here anywhere that you're going to tell us about, does it work? Is that under monitoring medication adherence? So generally speaking, people want to know about prevalence, and then people also want to know about effectiveness. So one way in which it can be effective is by monitoring medication adherence. Another way it could be effective is through, I don't know, actually a whole long list of things. But I don't see a section to tell me about the promise and the effectiveness of mobile health apps, which is something that I think all of us really want to know. So I think that's is, and what else is not there? Let me see, because I actually told you guys to do it, and I don't see it still. sorry, remember this is my group. What is not there is that this project, let's go back and look. Let's go back to the question. Oh yes, I remember it now. If you go back to this, we have this thing about how receptive, and if I recall, we decided to use UTaught2, did we not?
Yes, Professor, we decided to use that.
Right, so since we're deciding to use a particular technology acceptance model for this project, essentially we could rephrase question one to say, what is the level of, or to what extent is the technology acceptance of Jamaican that to adopt that? So I actually would rephrase it, but whether we rephrase it or not, right now in the literature review, there's nothing on technology acceptance. So since the group started with a smaller number, there are no more people in the group. What is missing is since we've gotten ethics approval already, we don't actually have in the literature review, because I just went through it, just the sections. We don't have anything yet about the particular model that we're using in the questionnaire to talk about the receptivity or the technology adoption of these groups of people to use these tools. So that's missing. So let me do something that to show everybody how there are two ways to do things, guys. This is not, I'm not really changing your thing. One way is to draw, I don't know if Mrs. Facey Shaw said it when she was talking. You either draw a map or you make an outline. So let me use their outline, which they have right here. That's what come to doing. So by the way, organizations are a really key part of doing a literature review. And then we can actually look at writing literature review. So we have patients with comorbidities, digital health tools, and I think that includes mobile health apps, e-prescription. Is that apps? Maybe it's a subset of that. Prevalence of mobile apps. I'm actually wondering, where does this fit exactly? I'm actually wondering where that fits, because I'm still kind of a bit puzzled. So I want to know about the effectiveness. Okay, I don't put them together. The promise and the effectiveness of mobile health apps. And by the way, since we're here, we could also put under effectiveness. In particular, we could actually want to know what do people know about e-prescription apps. As in, we could look at the overall thing, and then we can look at what do people know about the promise and effectiveness of e-prescription apps. So tools is just a general thing that they exist. How prevalent they are they, do people say that they're going to work, and do they actually measure? In fact, some people actually also be talking about what is called the efficacy, but I don't think there's going to be much about that. For those who want to know the difference, effectiveness is what is measured in a scientific study, and efficacy is actually in the real world as it works. So it's either that, or could be both, could be all three. I'm actually wondering here, modern through apps. I'm actually wondering here, features. This almost sounds like features of mobile health apps. And then I'm wondering, why are you only looking at this one? Because I think there are other kinds of features. Maybe that's the only one that you're interested in. So maybe that's the only one you want to talk about. So I can think of other things, like for this thing is medication adherence. Maybe that's the only one you're interested in your project. So you see, the other things could be like, yeah, I'm trying to think. Monitoring medication adherence. So the other thing is just right, appointments, medical appointments. So I'm actually knowing medical appointments, just going to medical appointments. Right. I actually know this for sure. So maybe you want adherence, other behavior thing. No, I don't know if you're going to actually write about all these things right now. I'm brainstorming that which could be in here. But what definitely needs to be in here, and I'm actually wondering if, yeah, then maybe I'm a bit, yeah, I'm actually wondering if this should really be underneath this, the promise. Maybe I should not do it this way. I'm actually trying to think. I'm actually thinking that managed and Medicare this is a subset of, yeah. Maybe this is the only thing under this you want to talk about. Do e-prescription apps generally monitor medication adherence, Ms. Gentle? I think you guys want to do it, but I don't think it's normally part of the medication adherence. Is that typically a part of e-prescription apps? Hello?
No,
You guys
Professor.
hearing me? Right, that's what I'm thinking. That's why I'm going back to my features. I'm just trying to think through. Let's leave it here. I'm just trying to brainstorm. So what you don't have, usability of mobile apps. And what you don't have at all, prevalence of mobile apps. You definitely need technology acceptance of mobile apps. But in fact, what you need to do is first is models, and then you might want to talk about technology. You know, so here you could be talking about TAM and Utah, or just one of them. Utah 2, maybe you won't be talking about both. So even when you talk about TAM, you know, that would might be a very short paragraph. But these are the two. This one is the most common. Technology acceptance model is the most common technology acceptance model. And Utah 2 is the most powerful one that explains what happens the most. And then technology acceptance of, I don't know, maybe mobile health. Right. So what I'm suggesting is that this is not here. So I'm going to put this, all that not here. No, I don't know for sure. Let me put this later. I'm not sure that you need to put this. So I put this here and I put this in a different color. Maybe you actually don't need to write about this. And then the last thing you'd want to do in the thing is you're definitely going to talk about your gaps in the literature or some kind of justification for, sorry, this would really be the last thing would be the summary. And in the summary, you're going to be talking about gaps in literature justification of this project. So for everybody who's watching me doing this live without thinking about it in advance, I'm not even sure. I'm still not liking this. I'm going to make a comment first. This is going to be the challenges of patients. Increased challenges during the pandemic, something. The point is, I'm not sure what you're writing there, but you're not just talking about the patient with comorbidities. You want to write here about the what you had added in the background, less filling of prescriptions. Whatever, I didn't spell that right. All right, something.
Professor, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I know that the literature review isn't supposed to answer the research questions, but there are certain apps in place in Jamaica currently that deals with e-prescription, and I'm wondering where in the literature review should we talk about current technology that is in use.
Oh yeah, that should be definitely in there. So okay, so let me go back to this now. So well, right now we have prevalence of mobile apps. This I would figure here this is going to be globally, locally. So you somewhere in here, if you cannot listen you're actually, that reminded me that there actually are mobile apps. You want to say here, whatever, some kind of, you want to go to say, possible, somewhere at the end of this analysis, remember you're doing what is a review, not just as Dr. Fisher said, a summary. You're not just doing a summary. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we're hearing, Professor.
No, because my phone dropped and I don't have on the case on it anymore. I was hoping I didn't match it up. And I think I'm talking through the phone, yes, through the phone, not through the, yeah. So possible, I don't even know what should I call this here. Now the thing about a literary review is that this doesn't have to be a section by itself, you know. Innovations in mobile health apps. So this might be prevalence of, maybe it's particularly e-prescription apps. So you actually might want to put the prevalence of mobile apps and then the prevalence of e-prescription apps, because you actually might want to, not even maybe, you definitely want to do this both locally and globally for both. Not true? As in, you want to tell the people who are reading all about that mobile apps are prevalent for all kinds of diseases, and then you want to focus on e-prescription apps, but locally, and you want to say that there are some missing elements in these e-prescription apps. What do you think?
Yes, Professor.
So if you haven't said this yet, then I would say you need to include this too. But yeah, so here we are, we have this. No, I didn't do it the right way. I don't want to do it that way. I want to highlight it. The highlight is this. No, not this. Where's the highlight? What am I doing wrong? Whatever I'm doing something wrong. This is the highlight. Yes. Right. So assuming that you already had this, maybe you don't have this either. Maybe there's no mobile health apps locally. I don't know, but well, I think let's just put this here too. Who knows if there's anything there? So based on what you told me, you already have this already in the background, you know. But at the end of it, the literature review supposed to go back to what's in the background. You're supposed to go back into it in greater detail. So I'm not even sure I'm putting it right. You get to me? So you're supposed to know, say again with greater detail that people with comorbidities are dying in droves, which they are. And not only that, they're staying at home and there are challenges in filling prescription something. So I'm not too sure I'm putting this right. So this might need to be, you know, I might not have written this properly. So you might need to, you know, reword. I'm not saying that I put this the right way. So I'm not sure if this is exactly where you want to put it, but the point is there has to be something at the beginning, because you have to establish that there's a problem. And what you would say in the background is not enough. And by the way, there's so much on this, you can't have a problem finding this literature. Is there anybody? Let me just pause for a second who is still here. I don't know how much people are here. Let me see. Stop share for a second. I just want to see that we have. Okay, we do have a few people, but not that many. So we have 10 people live, and I guess we had about 5 on YouTube. So not many. So for those who are here, any comment before I go further? Comment or question? I just wanted to see who is here. So no comment or questions. So I guess I just go back to where I was. Where was my? Yeah, this is it. Right. So my comment though to everybody who's watching me is, you see what I just did? So I'm now going to put this in single space because it's really long. I'm going to paragraph this and make it single space. and single space it and do this. So I came up with this little review outline. Outline draft. All right. So here's my draft of my review outline. Now, guys, there's so many ways to do this. And if I was writing it by myself, given that this is not complicated enough, I actually might have done an outline. I don't always do the outline. Sometimes I start writing and then do an outline. I never do it, depending on how complicated the thing is for me. But at the end of it, at this point it's 5, is it 5 or 4? 4 students doing this project, and there's some things that are gaps, and you actually need to look and see, is this order right? And we still might need to decide that, okay, maybe we'll always need to start with the problem. So here's the problem here, and then we'll have this opportunity that there are these digital health interventions, and I'm suggesting that you actually want to talk about the different types. It's not just apps, it's apps and other kinds of things, even just a brief overview. Since you've called this that, so you need to talk about the different types of intervention tools. Then you want to focus on mobile health apps, and in particular e-prescription apps, right? And then you want to talk about how prevalent are mobile apps, which actually always could be maybe a part of this digital, it could be instead of the way how I have it here, it could be like this. I'm trying to think what's a better way of doing it here. So here I actually want some text where I'm going to actually talk about, I want actually to talk about the various types of interventions. You get what I'm saying? Here I actually want you to talk about types of digital health intervention tools. And I just mentioned some. So it's not just apps, there's websites, there's SMS, there's a whole bunch of things. There's the wearables, all of those are digital health tools. So you should give a little background, don't have to be long, really quick. So that could be a paragraph that's giving us an idea of the types. And then since your project is focusing on health apps, you could talk about how prevalent they are, then prevalence of e-prescription apps, which is what your project is about. Yes? And then you want to talk about it locally. And now this part is not so much this is like the missing gap. So this could be not here, or it could be later. Remember, you're looking for gaps that you can figure out based on whatever. It could be literature or your critique. Everything that you review doesn't have to be what you read. That's why it's not just a report, it's a review. In other words, it's an appraisal. So every word is not just reporting, it's a review or appraisal, and you using your brain. So I don't know if you want to put it that way here, but at the end of it, the reason, so this is optional, this don't have to be here necessarily. So I'm going to put a strike through this. Font, strike through, because I don't know if I'm going to write this in there yet. Anyway, so we want to talk about technology acceptance models, because that's what we're going to look at. And we're going to look at the technology acceptance models of mobile health apps. And we want to look at, we could actually look at this before this, because I'm thinking, don't we want to know about the features, maybe even before this? We want to know if it works. So there's the promise of e-prescription apps. Then there is, so I probably would want to even put this before this. Not sure where. I'm actually just, sorry, there's actually not one right way, so that could be after. So we've gotten through that. There's some challenges. Then we talk about that there are these tools, that these tools either have promise or work. Then here are some features. Right now, apparently, this is the only feature you want. I'm actually thinking, don't you want other features? Is a feature that you want to talk about? Maybe not. Maybe do you want to talk about privacy and security? I don't know. I'm just there thinking, is that the only thing you actually want to talk about?
Professor,
yes?
The reason why
I'm brainstorming, I'm brainstorming as to what's important. I'm thinking, yes, I definitely want to know about that. There's privacy and security for me, people setting up my prescription online. What do you think? Huh?
That's true, Professor. But the main reason why we were looking at medication adherence was because we were focusing on those patients who have long-term diseases and
Okay.
those who require long-term medication all throughout their lives. So we're thinking that e-prescription could help to enhance medication adherence in those patients. So that's why we were focusing on that.
Right. So fine. I am fine. So you have that, but I'm just saying the thing about it, if you don't talk even briefly. So for example, if one of your research questions is this, it doesn't mean that you are going to focus on this, you know. What a literature review is doing is an overview of the topic. So I'm thinking for e-prescription, privacy and security must be important. You see, what this is you're trying to tell people that you have a basic understanding of the project. How can anybody say that privacy and security is not important? It may not be the focus of your research, but it must be super important, in my opinion. Who here going to disagree with me? I think it is super important. It don't have to be the focus of your research. But what I'm saying is write a paragraph on it. Not 10 paragraphs, you know, 1 paragraph. And say it's on literature.
Okay, Professor.
So when I just brainstormed before and said these things, maybe we don't need this, because by the way, there's literature that tells us that medical appointment adherence is really good. Those things tend to work. Maybe this is not what we want to write in this paper, so maybe we could just talk about those 2 things. Because I agree with you. This is like, this could be an unexplored thing and really exciting. So when you get to the summary, you know, is maybe the only thing that's really missing in the local things is maybe there are some usability issues. I'm going to guess here though. And maybe there is not medication monitoring that is helping doctors and patients and family members. In fact, one thing that could be put here, which you don't put, you know, I would put it, is well, this, in fact, I'll put it under here. Physicians, health professionals, I didn't spell that right, and family and friends. Sorry, the reason I'm thinking this, sorry, I've done other research on these kind of things before, and the whole point is having family and friends help you with medication adherence could help you comply. So I'm just telling you what I'm thinking. I'm brainstorming and I'm thinking medication adherence works better if it's not just a health professional, but also family and friends. So now that we have this kind of interesting literature review outline, which I'm now going to put, maybe it still needs some work, but I think I'm happy with my first draft of my outline. So I'm going to put this in the chat. I can also email you. So I'm sent to everybody. So I'm putting this. It's there, right? So I could also email what I'm. Let's go back to the paper itself. So in the paper, they basically start off by telling you that the area of mobile health and telemedicine are not novices. That's actually not an excellent sentence because novices are people. So you could say the area of this is not new, but people are not novices. So you could say, you know, agents of that are not novices. Something about that sentence is not right, but they've been made possible. That sentence is fine, the words of that. So you actually have some stuff that could be better. Some of the most challenging experienced by what? Or by people with chronic diseases is lack of access to a routine checkup with physicians, non-adherence medication, and long wait at line at pharmacies. Okay, that sounds reasonable. And they tell us that mobile health apps could help with that. All right. And then they start off now telling us the impact of COVID-19 on patients' comorbidities. And hopefully this will tell us more about it being a problem. So they have that there. So we're not going to read that right now. I actually want to focus on several little things. So like, for example, this should be Zhu et al. Like this. Zhu et al. If you want to start with them, it would be, this is a bracket like that. So this is right, according to Zhu et al. 2019, but that one was wrong. And it would be a study, a research study by Zhu et al. This is just a weird way to putting it. So, but let's go back to what is here. So according to you for this section, digital health interventions. Mobile health interventions such as mobile apps have been around and proven. Oh, there we go. This is now where I start to have a problem with you. Once you start to say proven to be a great alternative offering care to patients, right here you need a citation. Remember what Dr. Shaw said about making a claim without immediately having a citation? This is already a problem. This means that there's a lot of research that shows that it's a great alternative, and so it must have a citation. Let me see what you said next. Are you making notes?
Yes, definitely, Professor.
Let me try to put it in here. Citation. Try to see everything, but in case anything goes off or the thing. Adopting mobile health applications in patients with NCDs occur within a hospital setting and at patients' homes. All right. Liu et al. 2008. So again, this should be Liu et al. 2018. This way suggested that, so I'll just change this. Suggested that mobile health apps can improve patients' experience by providing an alternative to accessing health information, improving patient-physician communication, and improving short-term patient outcomes. Hot et al. Agrees with this. They should have a year. Huh? Okay, good. Goodbye. So they should have a year. I agree with this. However, there's to integrate these apps among patients. Hold on. So the thing about this is this here, whatever you're going to say about Hook et al., it should tell us what it says. Why is there a new paragraph? I want to know. Is your how this note tells me about it in another paragraph? That's really strange. So you tell us that they developed a cross-sectional study to determine the mobile apps among elderly, and they use the Utah model. Right. So either this should have been in this paragraph, but I don't understand why it's over 2 paragraphs. And then what I don't understand here is there's a study, Liu et al., that says it can improve patients' experience. And then this one says it can actually, can, what does it want to say it can do? Wow. So, for example, this says in the first paragraph that research has concluded accession rate among elderly was particularly low. So in 2017, or sorry, papers published in 2017, they did a cross-sectional study and they found that okay, the people in over 60 who refused to change to technology, it was associated with the ease of using the app and the degree to which they would actually think it would help them. But you see how this has rated it? It's very hard to follow. So you just told me this proof. But I'm trying to think what proof? You tell me there's proof, but you tell me about a study that said it does improve experience. That's experience is not healthcare. So this means that people have a better experience. And this one says that some elderly people don't believe it will work for them and think it's hard to use. So I'm still going back to you tell me there's proof, but then you only tell me better experience and that some elderly don't believe it will work, and some of them also don't believe that it's easy to use. Okay, so I'm still waiting for the proof. And then a study said that the added use of there's a security concern. Say security concern. Yeah, not too surprisingly. And then it tells what e-prescription is the term. No, so that seems to be a subset. So you told me up here that it's proved and you have given me no proof. So this part here now needs to be a subset, which needs to be e-prescription. I need to make sure that since you're now switching to another subtopic, it needs to have a heading. You know, as a heading. And here's a problem. This section, which you bring up the things I expect, which is that privacy and security is a problem. Elderly people is not as receptive to these kind of mHealth applications as other people. But let me show you and everybody else right now live what is in the literature. So let's go. So let's go and open my personal favorite online. Remember, there are others. So you can go to the library website and you can actually use PubMed for this one, but let's start with Google Scholar. So we want to know mobile. Let's start with apps, mobile apps. Let's go with effectiveness. So, and I even want to go since 2017. So that's since the last 4 years. So this one is on mental health. This is on hypertension, 81 and 71. For smoking cessation. This is for pregnancy. This is for physical, this is for a whole bunch of things. For physical activity, diet, drug, mental, I wonder if there's anyone for overall. I'm just trying to look for one in the overall thing. I'm not seeing overall. This is set by 100. This is for mobile apps in cardiovascular disease. Anyway, this one's set by 100. So I go to open this one first because it's kind of curious. This is 100 citations. This is a lot of citations for academic stuff. So this article says, and it's a systematic review. Why do I like systematic reviews? Because you go to the end of the article and you're going to see 45 references. They read a lot of articles. So they say mobile technologies are innovative, scalable approaches to reducing risk of cardiovascular disease, but evidence rate effectiveness and acceptability, which is same as usability, remains limited. We want to explore that. They tell us what the design is, what the methods are. We don't have time to read that. So let's read the results and conclusions. They looked at 10 studies from 607 patients from 5 countries, and these various kinds of interventions. And they say that improved physical activity, medication adherence, and smoking cessation were characteristics of app users. Appealing app features include tracking healthy behavior, self-monitoring, disease education, and personalized, customized content. That's what I would have seen in your project. Small samples, short duration, and selected bias was noted, as in other words, the studies could have been better done. So it says that these studies had low overall scientific quality of evidence. That's why, for example, when you say there is proof, there's no proof. There's just some evidence or moderate evidence. So multiple behaviors and cardiovascular risk factors appear to be modifiable in short-term use with the use of mobile apps. This says that evidence for effectiveness requiring larger controlled studies of longer duration with emphasis on process evaluation data to better understand important system and patient level characteristics. So for example, what I get from this study was published in 2020, last year, not even 1 year ago. And basically they're saying that, yes, there is some evidence. That's what I get from all of this. There's some evidence that apps to help with the #1 killer in the world, cardiovascular disease, can help with some things in particular, see it here, physical activity, medical adherence, and smoking cessation. That's why it's pretty good that you guys decided to take on medication adherence, because there's some evidence that apps can work for that, especially for short-term use. There's not enough research on the long-term use of apps, and by the way, when they start to do that, people actually stop to use apps. In fact, I've done some reading, and older people tend to use apps for longer. If they start to use them at all, they tend to use them longer than younger people. But we're not seeing it right here in this paper. But what my point is, you see this? Let's go back again. So there's this reference. I would suggest that this could be one of your references. But the point is, in different areas. So let's look at another one here. This one is apps for physical activity diet, So this one is in particular for this. Let's see what this reference says. Is in different areas now. So this one says the results. There's no strong evidence for support for mobile apps in improving health behaviors because few studies found significant differences. Interesting. So they looked at 52 randomized controlled trials in all of these areas: physical activity, diet, drug and alcohol use, mental health. People perceptions was positive. So there seems to be promise. People were happy with its use. But in terms of actual, it works, there's little evidence according to this. So by the way, remember what Dr. Fisher was saying about one study says someone else said other? So look at the one on cardiovascular health. That one says that there seems to be evidence, whereas this one says people like using it, but there's little evidence that it actually makes a difference. But yet you are saying that there's been proof. And I didn't see the proof. You told me about this thing about satisfaction. So if you all love going to UTech, which I know many of you don't love, that don't mean that's going to make you work well at your job to come. Don't you all agree? Or you could hate UTech and it still lead you to work good at your job to come. So liking something and getting a result is not the same thing. Who here not following my argument? Anybody still here? Am I talking to myself? I'm getting less and less people.
I'm listening, Professor.
So I'm losing people because oh, somebody in the waiting room. Sorry, I didn't realize Stephen Gent was in the waiting room. I need to have somebody else. We only have 7 more minutes. Mr. Panto, am I making sense? Christopher? Panto?
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Just took
You're
my little
here.
while to get the
No man, I
microphone.
just had anybody with me, so I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself.
No, I'm
Anybody see-
here.
You're
Yes,
here.
what you have been saying makes
Okay.
perfect sense to me.
To you. Okay, good.
Yes, I think it is valuable information. And
Are you
I've
guys seeing my
taken
screen
note-
right now?
No, I'm not able to see your screen.
Okay, let me go back and share screen, right? I just was checking if anybody is still here. So
I'm
sorry, I
here.
know that at least Mike will be here, but I'm wondering who is here.
Yes, I'm
Right.
seeing your
So
screen.
if you go back again, the point is, you see, we could spend more time, but you can say that that section you did needs some holy for work because you made a statement that there's proof. And I already know that on this matter, what there is mostly is promise. There's a whole heap of promise that mobile apps and other kinds of interventions may make all the difference in the world, but there's not yet proof. But I'm waiting for the proof because I personally, Suzanne Muir wants to do research in this for the next 10 years if possible, because I think there's a lot of promise. And I think that if people spend some time on it, eventually it'll be effective. And for example, medication adherence is one area that could really be effective if there's sufficient online support to help the patients comply. And even so, there's other problems because you also have to have the things where if the person's having side effect, you know, can the health professionals deal with changing the medications, all of that? And there are other things too. Can we help people with like lifestyle changes that could reduce the need for medication? Kind of complicated. We're not trying to deal with all that here. Right now, we're just trying to say people are sick. Let's give them some medication through this app. In fact, what I don't see in your project too is where's the thing where they could order it. Like I'm actually back to my little list. Here, back to my list. Wait, where was the part where we were going to talk about the ordering? I think you need somewhere here that you're going to talk about the what is it? E-commerce? Where was
Professor,
that?
you're thinking about incorporating the end system with the e-prescription app. That's what you're
Yeah,
talking
but
about.
whatever, but it needs something there. If you're going to, sorry, if your thing is going to be, you know, purchasing, even purchasing medication, the point is you're going to need something. If you're going to talk here about ends and whatever, so you might here be prevalence of mobile right here. Maybe you might just want to talk about prevalence of mobile apps, and then locally you might want to talk about ends, but then you want to, I don't know, you know, I don't know. But the point is you have to think about how you're going to do it. But since it's e-commerce, I think I'll put this up here. You may want to talk about you know, if you want to talk about e-commerce and then through ends, you know, who knows, question mark. Definitely e-commerce needs to be there somewhere given your project. And I'm sure this is not going to be the first e-commerce action for mobile health apps. You know, people are even buying the apps sometimes and something, I don't know. But given this project, I think you need that. So my point is, in addition to looking at effectiveness, you know, let's go to one thing I just made up because I wasn't sure what all the features are. I was putting features. I can't obviously can't spell features, good thing you can't tell me for it. Oh, see, I think your feature assessment. So they even have something mobile health apps on COVID-19. No, that's particularly COVID-19 apps, but that might be interesting. I don't know. The point is there's so many stuff on this, and you definitely want to look at, of course, maybe let's look at what's this area again? what's this last thing? E-prescription. So e-prescription, e-prescribing. Right. They clearly don't like that word. Prescription. E-prescriptions. So you have an article on that. This is a revolution in pharmaceutical electronic prescriptions. Cited by 8. So at least there's some papers on this. Seems as if there's not that many papers on e-prescriptions in particular. But even look at this. Mobile apps are real-world evidence in healthcare. I wonder what this says. Because it mentions e-prescriptions. This doesn't mean what it tells me. Okay. Oh, this is potential and challenges of using mobile apps for real-world evidence. Even this, mobile apps for real-world evidence. Yeah, it's actually not related to your project, you know. Look here. You know what real-world evidence is? What works? So this is using real-world evidence in healthcare and you want to monitor. This might be a good one. It's just published recently. It's looking at use of real-world evidence for healthcare research and evaluation. No, that's not really your project, but at the end of it, if you want to be monitoring medication adherence, you could possibly use that app in the long term for using the data for research. That probably wasn't what you were thinking about, but actually I have a master's student she's not looking at mobile apps, she's just looking at using data of health for real world evidence. Anyway, the point is there's a lot of work on this. So hopefully what I've done so far has been helpful because we're basically at 7 o'clock.
Yes, it has been, Professor. Thank you.
And basically you should do the same thing and replicate it through every paragraph. So what most people don't do is you need to have an organization that works. Each paragraph must have enough citation and no claim that no go so, or if it even go so, it must have a citation that is truthful. Yes? And then all of them should flow together. Even when it's organized well, it must flow. So when you get to one paragraph, the next paragraph should flow. So I didn't know to teach you that, but really each part should flow into the next part. And at the end of the entire literature review, you're going to give us either what is called the concluding remarks or the summary. And part of your concluding remarks is going to be that you've justified your research question. So remember, like with this group, they're looking at how receptive or was the technology acceptance of these 3 groups of Jamaicans, the physicians, the pharmacists, and the patients to use this particular thing. So they should be looking in their literature review as to what is the technology acceptance of e-prescription apps across the world. They haven't done so yet. So there's a gap in their literature review. So perhaps you don't know what that is in Jamaica, but they haven't done that at all in their literature review. So the literature review definitely is not finished. So you've made a good or fair start, but there's still a lot of work. Despite the fact that you did it last semester for CRM, no, sorry, semester 1, and you can see that a whole lot more work can be done.
Yes, Professor.
Well, that's it. Anybody, what I'm encouraging everybody to do for next week is, along with your supervisor, that depends on where you are now, because if you already have ethics approval, you need to start collecting data, right? But at the end of it, if you don't have a robust literature review by the time you're going to present at the final viva, you're going to be in problems. And you want to at a minimum have a passing literature review. And I've seen so many groups come with a literature review that is so bad that the only thing the panel can say is we don't understand what's the basis for this project. So that group that is on, I read it, they already have a basis, even though there are many parts that are missing. But really what they have right now is not yet an A, because many parts are missing and they make claims that not fully truthful. Because there is not yet proof that mobile apps work based on the current scholarly literature. It's either that there is some evidence in some areas, for example, smoking cessation, I know some of reading already. Smoking cessation, medication adherence, medical appointments. There's a few things, but not everything. And some things there's almost no evidence. People try for it to work, and so far no work yet. Right. So some things it works well, and so far for other things it doesn't work yet. And we still have to see if it's going to work. So next week, if we were to follow the chapters, we will be on chapter 3. But I think what would make more sense to me is for us to look at, to spend more time on, well, you guys can tell me. I'm actually thinking that we should spend time. It's really based on what everybody needs right now. It would make more sense for us to spend time on, I don't think enough people have collected data to start doing the analysis. I don't think so. So I think it would make sense for us to make sure that people either know how to do Mini Viva chapter 1 to 3, or to make sure at least that their chapter 1 is in good shape. If you don't have a good chapter 1, then don't have a major project. So I'm inviting everybody. If you don't have a good chapter 1 yet, you can come here and we give you feedback. But if you have a good chapter 1, and like my group does, but your literature review still needs some work, you can come here for a workshop on it. And if you're somebody who just starting CRM or don't do it yet, you can come free and you can learn from being here. Mr. Morgan, did you learn something today? Miles? We're talking to Miles Morgan and he's not responding. Guess maybe I've missed some people. Anyway, looks as if there's nobody else wanting to talk. So it's 7:04. I'm going to wish you all good. Next week, we're going to go back to the Wednesday date, and you can feel free to share with your colleagues. We're probably going to go live with the same Zoom link. I don't think I'm going to change it. But we'll see. If I change it, I'll let you know. All
Okay,
right?
Professor. See you next week.
Okay,
Hey,
thank you.
man, see you guys next week. Take care now. All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Hey, man, have a good night.
Yes, good night, sir.